Welcome back to Wild Contemplations with Kristin and Cori. I am Kristin. I am a 1-3 emotional projector in human design, and in astrology, I am a Sag Sun, Pisces rising, Libra moon. And Cori and I are taking a journey around the wheel and talking about the gene keys that are illuminated by the sun right now and their programming partners in the earth. And we always take a minute to reflect on the last gene keys that we spoke about and jump into the new energies that we're feeling. And it's been a very, very interesting experiment, contemplation, and ritual for me. So, hello, welcome to our podcast. And Cori, I'll hand it over to you.
Yes, welcome. Thank you for adventuring with us. I'm Cori. I am a 4-6 sacral manifesting generator in human design, and I am a Cancer Sun, Virgo Moon, and Virgo Rising. And last episode, we were contemplating the sun in 27 and the earth in 28. So we'll do a check-in, like Kristin said, for that after we take a few breaths together. And then today we will be exploring the sun in 24 and the earth in 44. But yeah, let's just take a minute to come into this space together and ground. If it feels good to close the eyes or soften the gaze, maybe bring a hand to the body. Just take 3 breaths together here.
You know, last week I was reflecting that I felt like I was in this very liminal space, is how I described it. And I did feel that for a couple of days. And it's interesting. So Fridays have been my goddess day. I implemented this a little while back, and it's a day for me to just take time and space for me and not do anything related to the business. And what I've noticed um, is just how tied into the pressures of the world that I feel right now, and how difficult it is for me to kind of pull out. Um, and this is something that I speak about a lot with respect to rituals, because I feel like I used to, when people would ask me like, are the energies ever gonna calm down? And I felt like we would really going through these ebb and flows of energy. Like it'd be really intense and then it would take a break, and it'd be really intense and take a break. But as of, I would say, gosh, at least the last year, if not maybe year and a half-ish, I would say, I have felt this energy just consistently like progressing in intensity. And so I always say that it's our rituals are more important than ever now. Like we have to be diligent about our practices because of this, exactly this. And I feel like I take a lot of pride in the fact that I can roll through like really intense traffic and land in a space and host a circle in a very grounded, like meditative way. Like I can really land in that space. And yet here I am, like as practiced as I am, I'm still like I can feel those pressures so heavily. And it took me some time yesterday to really kind of wind out of that. I think part of it was I was on a mastermind call that I'm in early on, right? So I'm already in other people's energies. And then I went to the chiropractor. And so, I was having to decouple from those, as opposed to just waking up and having the day like purely to myself, which I think is very supportive for me when I'm trying to release and decompress. But yeah, I'm feeling, I want to say detached almost. I'm feeling this, I guess, a little of that liminal space, like I was saying. I'm feeling like I'm just kind of here, but I can observe and feel all the pressures around me. Um, so I am, I guess, experiencing a little bit of both now that I reflect on it. I'm in this liminal space, but I can very intensely feel these pressures and noticing how much effort it is taking for me to really detach from those. And I think that when I feel overwhelming energies, that my instinct is to kind of pull back, in order to regain like my presence. So that's a little bit of how I'm feeling. How about you, Cori?
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Um, I I guess I was on a call earlier in the week, and the word that was the one word that I was really seeing stand out to describe how I was like kind of experiencing the energy was like intense. Um, it's really been like this. It kind of over the last week, it's kind of felt a bit roller coastery. If I think that's the best word to describe it. It's like some days I'm feeling so like this surge of, like you said, all of the pressures and a lot of energy. I'm very much feeling like I know we are like on this precipice of change. And so it's like, I know things are reorganizing themselves, but to the body, it feels a bit like, whoo. And then there are moments where like I come back down and find the grounding. So I'd say this week, like it would be like one day would be like nervous system overload, and then the next would be like, okay, I'm gonna take this a bit slower. And then the last couple of days, like yesterday and even coming into today, have felt like real wavy again to me, or like the heightened energetic feeling. So it's like I think we talked about this, earlier, well, a few episodes ago, like catching our breath. Like it feels like almost like I can't catch my breath. So like you said, like yesterday, I just had to take like the evening pretty much and like lay horizontal, drop into meditations. And even that, with dropping into like the meditations and stuff, I don't know what's happening there. A bit challenging because, yeah, there was just a lot going on. And so, um, yeah, that's where I'm at, I guess.
Hmm.
It's been feeling. But like I know that it's part of the change that's coming, and I also know that I have planets or placements here that are asking for transformation, deep transformation. Um, and so I've noticed, like just since our conversation last week with the 27 in selfishness, altruism, and selflessness, I have been asking myself, like, really look at where I'm giving and the sort of like intention behind that, and reviewing a lot of that. And even like I've felt the 28 really coming up with that like purposelessness, totality, and immortality, like kind of questioning some of the things I'm doing. Like, is this what I want to be doing still? Or am I doing it because it was what I wanted to be doing before and I've just continued doing it? So there's been a lot coming up for me to sit with.
Mm-hmm. I really feel like I'm in. more of a surrendered state when it comes to that piece. It's like right now I'm focusing on my energy and feeling like those, like the purpose and all that stuff will land around me. Um, yeah, so I really feel more surrendered when it comes to that. There was something else that you said. Oh, okay, I remember now. Um, I also just wanted to take a minute to recognize and acknowledge this space too. So I have a tendency to, as I said, like when I get overwhelmed, I want to detach. And this has been this space, Cori and I had been talking about collaborating on something for a while now, but we didn't like the thing wasn't landing. And then like two things landed in a row. And, it's this and this circle space that we're doing together. But um, I didn't, I was nervous at first with this podcast coming on weekly as a projector because I was worried about being able to keep up with it energetically. And then I reframed it as like, this gets to be a ritual space for me. This gets to be a space where I get to land and reflect on my energy and just have it be one of my rituals that I do. And it's just a weekly ritual. And that's been really beautiful. And then also, I want to say just and recognize you and how beautiful it's been to be in space with you and be able to reflect on these things together and just how much, like, even before Cori and I started recording, I said that I feel like the energy is intense and I can't seem to release from it, right? And then even in my reflection, I reflected that, you know what, I do feel some of that liminality here, if that's a word. But like to me, it's a testament to the value of this space and in being in containers with people who just are open to holding space for these kinds of reflections and having these conversations and contemplations and just holding space for curiosity and no judgment. And, admittedly being on this podcast as well, like I'm being more vulnerable about some of the things in my life. And there's parts of me that are like, oh my gosh, like, why did you speak that out loud? Like, people aren't going to think you're a capable coach because you're going through these things. But it's also like, that's exactly what makes me capable and powerful in the things that I do because I recognize this movement within myself and I can witness it in another person, and hold space for that too. So it's been a this has been a very interesting like I said, experiment for me. But yeah, I just want to speak to the value of, I'm realizing that I not that I can't do it alone, but maybe I don't want to do it all alone. Like I do really value being here with you and um even everybody here who's being a part of this conversation and witnessing this conversation because that matters too. It's a real co-creation, not just with Cori and I, but with you too. Even if you're not engaging and saying, this is what these keys mean to me, which we want you to do, by the way. Like, we would love to hear from you, but also just you listening and being here adds to that energy because you're now carrying a piece of this too with you. And maybe you're having other conversations with people about it, but it's together we're creating this resonance that matters right now. It's better out than in, right? It's better to be expressed than for us to be holding and mulling and all of that.
First of all, I love you. And I love this space. And I was reflecting a little bit more on the 27 because I was, yeah, just having some things come up. and I wanted to deepen my contemplation a bit. And so I was, yeah, really focusing on the gift of altruism and reading a bit from the Gene Keys book. And they talk about the pod mind there, like dolphins, and really like how connected they are as a community and how they look out for one another and um it's like the individual has their expression and their experience, but it's also still like being so communicated and locking in with the others in the group, through just that resonance, and the information is just being kind of spread, and everybody's sort of holding the space and looking out for one another. And we'll actually kind of touch on it on these concepts of yes, synarchy and this like fractal connection, and the way that we weave these webs and things um, across, with doing this in a way where we're sharing, where people can tune in from anywhere around the world at any time and still be in space and conversation with us. Like it gives me chills to think about that. It's so cool. And we'll be exploring that today with the Earth's position in 44, and that's where you have your Venus. So I just really I saw that shine. In the way that you just expressed how much you do value a space like this, and I truly see it as like the future that we are moving into, and the way that we're really like designed to be and evolving into settling more and opening up to more yeah, this connection that we have with each other and the support that offers us. It's really beautiful. And so I think that's a good kind of movement into today's keys that we'll be contemplating, which is the sun in 24 with the frequency bands of addiction, invention, and silence. In human design, this lives in the Ajna center and reaches towards the head, and it's the gate of rationalizing. In the I Ching, it translates to the return or returning. And then we have the Earth in 44 with its frequency bands of interference, teamwork, and synarchy. In human design, this lives in the spleen. This will actually be the last spleen gate that we move through with the Earth. We've just actually went through all of them in our time together so far. So this lives in Scorpio, obviously, and it reaches towards the heart center, and it's the gate of alertness in human design. In the I Ching, it translates to coming to meet. And this is also very connected to when I think of this energy, I think of bees, um, and the way that they kind of like come together in community and serve that like higher heart purpose. Um, and again, I just think you really touched on a lot of its energy when you were sharing about this space and what you value about it. So yeah, I'll stop there and see what's coming up for you.
Mm. It's interesting as you reflect on that, on like community, because it makes me think about my relationships in the past and how I viewed them. And I feel like every relationship that I've engaged in, it's like I feel like there's a higher purpose to it, right? It's not just like, oh, Cori's really fun to hang out with, so I'm going to hang out with her, right? Like Cori is a beautiful person, like her being not emotional too, and I'm emotional, but just the space holding that she's capable of, and just your pure contemplative nature. Just I'm in awe of when you're like, I'm off the grid and contemplating life, and I love that. And I've certainly been in spaces like that too, but also like that my projector heart is like, okay, like let's make humanity better or let's like, do something. Um, like I see all these possibilities and I want to see them come to life. Um, so it's interesting to reflect on that, right? That I get to have this relationship with you and have it be this contemplative, curious nature and in space to hold everything, right? Without judgment. And and I have another friend who I'm thinking about right now who is really fun to hang out with. And we can just sit in her garage and play like old school hip hop songs and remember every word to them. And, just this whole other version of us comes out. And that's really fun too, right? It's childlike. It reminds me of having fun and not being so serious, right? But it's not just about, oh, we, sat in a garage and played music and sang. It's what I just said. It's this, there's a deeper purpose to everything. And I'm not, like, I'm curious, how do you view relationships? Like, is that, I want to say normal? Like, does everybody feel this way? I'm curious for the listeners too, right? Do you feel that every relationship you're in holds a purpose? And how does that make you view the relationship differently? And I'll share one more thing before I hand it over to you. Early on in my journey, when I started just really peeling back the layers and learning more about me, one of the hardest things for me to face was letting go of friendships, or relationship, even like a version of a relationship that once was, and now it's shifted into something else. Like really just allowing the relationship to be what it is. I found that I was somebody who, because I'm so deep, when I found a new friend that I connected with, I wanted them to kind of fill all the buckets for me instead of just like these singular purpose paths that I'm expressing, just a minute ago. Um, so I didn't always view relationships in this way, right? I've sort of come to that conclusion now that there is this purpose, and it allows me now to also let go of friendships with more ease and recognize that their chapter has closed. And on that note, also, like I have a tendency to be very final about that stuff. Like you're either in my world or like especially in the deep, when you're in the deep parts with me, you're either in my depth or you're not. You're just in the peripheral, if you will. Right? Like very few people do I allow in this depth part, right? And so that's also interesting, right? Like I have a lot of people hanging out in the periphery and people that I know that I can connect with to, do a collaboration with or go for a walk or whatever, right? Just be connected, to community in that way. But there's a difference for me in these deep connections that I hold. And those are the ones I would say I find with more purpose, like with my partner, for example. Like I see a purpose in our relationship, a very deep purpose that, honestly keeps me like eye on the eye on the purpose, like even if I'm throwing a temper tantrum 1 minute, I can remember the greater purpose. And when these relationships come to a natural close, they come to a natural close, and I'm able to see that, it's like that one, I don't know if it's a quote, but people come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And I feel like, I've navigated a lot of loss in that perspective, like a lot of friendships that I thought were going to be lifetime and aren't or weren't. My one friend that I've had my whole life and I will probably have my whole life is my sister. like she's a true lifetime. Maybe she's the only lifetimer. I don't know. But I'm curious, like how do you experience relationships?
So I have like this deep need for alone time and that contemplation that you were talking about. Um, I haven't always understood that. And I used to think that that was like something wrong with me. But I know that it's always been there. And so I usually go through these sort of cycles and phases where I will be very social, like be very connected, and then I need space and time to like myself afterwards. Um, in my like probably, I'm a sixth line, especially like in the design or body side. So like physically, it's almost like it's a part of my process. For the first 30 years of life, I was much more in the mix of things. And I also just felt like an obligation to my friendships, to like, you know, okay, we're gonna just there. Um, so I felt this like obligation when I was younger, probably through even a little after my Saturn return, um, to like if someone was my friend, like, I felt a certain obligation to the relationship and yeah, just like not really honoring the way that the like cycles were moving. But I would say that after like when I came on the roof, so to speak, in human design, I started to, first of all, understand my energy much more deeply. Um, and then, second of all, I started to understand that just because I've had a relationship with someone doesn't mean I always have to have a relationship with someone. Like they come to a natural ending. A lot of them just move through cycles. And so, like you, um, and that happened even before I, came into my 30s. But I think it was when I was in my 30s that I deeply understood that that's okay. Before, I think it was like I felt like I had done something wrong or that, yeah, it was something that needed to like improve or fix. So I guess I would say I resonate deeply with a lot of what you share. And yeah, I think the more that I've gotten to know myself, and that took like, I would say over these last like 10 years, I've really been in a much more like introspective place in my life that's needed a lot more alone time and there are relationships that fall away because of that. Um, but I also feel that I've come into relationships that are much more authentic in the sense that it's not just someone that I, you know, knew from when I was young, and so they're still going to be my friend now. It's more like connecting with people who truly see me and truly just like accept me in my fullness. And I trust that like if people are meant to be in my life, they will be. And if they're not, then that just means that the cycle is changing. And it doesn't mean that it won't come back around again. Like I don't, I guess I don't feel like there needs to be like
Hmm.
a saying goodbye or a finality to things. I'm more like ebb and flow and like um, trusting that if it comes back around, that that's meant to. And also that there are just, again, I've really come to understand seasons and cycles. So like maybe some things like we're, doing something every day and we're having so much fun. And then, that cycle comes to an end, things shift and change in life. And then we aren't talking so much. And maybe the next couple of years, it's like, I don't really see you or, like hang out and talk, but maybe something comes back around and, like I trust those changes and I trust very deeply now in this idea of like, uh, like that who's meant to come into my life at certain times will, and I can trust in that. And I can also trust in like my discernment and not needing to change who I am to make a relationship work. That was kind of long-winded, but
Mm. Do you remind me, do you have a defined identity center?
I do.
Yeah. I love that you said, this contemplative part, like you always knew it was a part of you. Um, but it didn't always feel like accepted or welcomed, maybe as a child. So I think that that's really cool that you always knew, right? There was nothing, even though you were made to feel like there was something wrong with that part of you, but you always knew that that was part of you. So I love hearing that. And I also love six lines, especially off the roof, like, because I always describe six lines off the roof as like the Ram Dasses of the world, like the gurus that you're just like, you've mastered life and I just want to listen to you all day long. Like it's really like I'm in awe listening to them. So I really, really love six lines. Um, there was something I was going to bring up. Oh, so the finality piece is interesting for me. Like I said, you're either in or you're out. For some reason, there is something in me that has to complete the ending. And I don't know if that is part of my open identity center. Like I have to release um, that friendship for what it was. And I'm not closed to them coming back in a new season, but I have to have that finality. And this is something actually that has created issues with some of my friendships that have, parted ways or just even in that discussion of like, we understand that things aren't what they were and they've shifted, right? Where I have this very hard line here and I'm curious now if that, like, I always attributed it to like my defined heart because like I feel like the defined heart can be extreme, but also I know that I have the five, I believe, that sits in the sacral.
Mhm.
And on the other end of it is the 15, which is the gate of extremes, which is interesting to me. Like that is not who I am technically. I don't have that energy, but like I very viscerally feel that energy. And again, I don't know if it's my defined heart or my open identity center, but I do need this very visceral cut of energy to really be clear about what my energy consists of, if that makes sense. Like I've I've really learned to separate from energies in that way. And even when I was in corporate, seeking who am I? What's my path? What's my path? Where do I belong? Even in friendship groups, like it's interesting too, I think about friendship groups in high school. Like I used to switch friendship groups like all the time. And I would sort of cut the other ones off. Like I'm exploring this new identity now. I have to cut you off. Like yeah, so I guess I was thinking maybe I learned to do this, um, like through the seeking in corporate, but I did the same thing actually. I would explore a certain path and then I would cut it off. I would get to an end point and I would switch paths and I'd cut the other one entirely off. But the energy of it always, like I attribute the way that I think about things and the way that I can really merge like, that chameleon energy. I can really take bits and pieces from so many things and come up with really creative ways to solve problems or see things because of all the experiences of people, of situations, of jobs that I've held in my life. Again, with that open identity. But I find that in navigating it, I have to have this visceral cut. Do you please reflect for me something? I
Yeah.
remember my projector group, I was like, I remember when she was we were talking about how like the projector's journey is all about the other. And I was like, but I care so much about my journey. Like, I'm confused. Like, tell me I'm not wrong. And she was like, tell me I'm right. And I was like, yes, exactly. Tell me I'm not wrong, Cori.
Well, I think that, yeah, it's unique to each of us, right? Um, so it's feeling into what is best for you. And again, I would imagine that as a projector, because you can see and like really dial into the other, that there might need to be that finality just to like kind of keep the field clear. And I mean, yeah, I also probably feel a little bit of like Pluto and Libra there as well. Like, when the like allowing the space for that transformation to occur if it needs to, and like having there be that like full death, like going through that whole entire process. Um, and so, yeah, I think that each of our energies operates in unique ways. You have a lot of planets in your seventh and eighth houses. And so um, I feel like it's aligned for you to trust in that. Like, I need to have these boundaries. And like you said, it's like clearing it in that way, but knowing that it could come back in another way. So in a sense, there is still that like openness, but it's just like knowing that in order for me to kind of like have my field be clear and clean um and just like knowing knowing that we need to have like some sort of process for it to move through and then like move completely through a cycle maybe. And I just have like a lot of mutable energy. And I still do things like, you know, like every day I kind of like clear cords and work with energy in that way. So it's like, I think there's different ways that we just approach it. Um, and yeah, each of us is going to have a unique way that works best for us. And that shifts and changes over time as well, too, right?
So I'm right, basically.
Absolutely.
No, I'm seriously though. I love that you brought the projector piece up too. Because even in what I just gave the example of like how the projector is like we see the other and our journey is through the other. It is truly like I am able to see myself through the other, but I still see myself. And I think sometimes we talk about projectors like we can't see ourselves. And I think that to me, that's the true projector's journey of actually learning to see ourselves, even though it might be through the lens of the other. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, interesting.
Like really, so I think it's so important for projectors to surround themselves with people who do see them and do recognize them and reflect their amazingness back to them. Um, and so, yeah, like you said, I think it's part of the journey. And for each of us, it looks a little bit different. But like, I think that's, again, what these keys that we're exploring that really touch on like community are saying is like, it's in knowing thyself that we then can plug into the greater whole, right? Because if we're just plugging into that greater whole without knowing who we are, and we talked a bit about this last episode, it's like if things get distorted, then we're syncing up with the people who don't see us. And like it's because we don't know ourselves. We're like the signals get really crossed in that sense. So I know that like again, the way that my journey has been, like the time and space that I needed to take to go inward was really essential, um, to know myself at a deeper level, because it's actually pretty difficult for me to like know who I am when I'm surrounded by others. Because it just gets blur, the lines get blurry for me. It's like easy for me to pick up on other people's energy, and then like you were saying, kind of chameleon like, but for me it's like, where do I where do I like start and end and the other begins? And it's just sometimes, um for me, that gets confusing when I've been in space with others. um and so it's like the coming back to my own space to kind of like clear is kind of essential to my process.
Hmm. Do you find that that's more from an identity lens or emotional? And for clarity, I'm asking that for those listening because Cori has a defined identity center, and I don't know if it's open or undefined emotional center. So
Yep.
I'm curious if the energy you're taking on, I don't know what's where I begin and they end is emotional, right?
Yeah,
Like, is that emotional? I would guess that it's emotional energy, but I'm curious. That's why I'm asking the question.
absolutely. Yeah. I think a lot of it is emotional. It's interesting because um, I think talked about it here before, but the way that my energy is that none of my channels are conscious. So actually, like if you look at the conscious side of my chart, it looks like a reflector chart. So consciously, I feel very much like a reflector.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, I have a completely open emotional center. So I have
mm,
no gates whatsoever. And I don't even have any gates reaching towards it. Like it's wide open. Um, so that's a big part of it. I also have an undefined spleen center. So like two out of my three awareness centers are
mm,
having a bit of openness there. I have a completely open head center, and I have an undefined heart. Um, so it's like, yeah, there's a lot of information that can come in from the world around me where it just starts to get like, especially with the emotional, I would say the emotional plays the biggest role, because then, because I'm so tuned in to and conditioned to like kind of shift according to the emotional landscape, then it's like uh need to unplug so I can clear the field.
mm,
Um, because there's just, yeah, a really deeply conditioned part of me that starts to shift and change who I am based on how other people are feeling and how I can like
mm,
manage that.
mhm. I love the reflector piece that you said too, because that is what they do, right? I mean, I think for reflectors, the biggest thing is really detaching and knowing that they're the vessel. That's where I see reflectors struggling the most when they're like they overly attach into their environments and they don't let it just kind of run through them and be a reflection. It's more of an it becomes that identity. And so yeah. And um yeah, with your openness, the completely open head. And is the other awareness the ajna?
Yeah. So I do
Yeah.
have a defined ajna,
Yeah.
but again, um, yeah, because I think my channels are like made up of, it's super interesting. You know, I'm a manifesting generator, but my channels in the sacral and my channels in the throat that make, sorry, yeah, my channels, my gates in the sacral and the throat that make up my channels are undefined or unconscious in those centers. So it's like the thing that makes me a manifesting generator, the two centers actually, the connection there is a bit unconscious to me. So it's more in my body. I know that I'm a manifesting generator. I can feel it very much. Like when I found out that I was a manifesting generator, I was like, everything makes sense now. But
Mm-hmm.
it's more that I can see it through, like, in retrospect. It's maybe not necessarily that I like feel like it all the time, because I do more consciously feel very open.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. And I wonder if, um, like, I'm curious with your sixth line too, if at some point you'll land with your unconscious being more conscious, right? Meaning, yeah, like, do you have to finish that on the roof journey before they truly shift into mastery and consciousness, if you will? Yeah, like I'm just curious if your sixth line plays into that because clearly you're conscious of it now,
Yeah.
right? But you're still expressing that it's a very unconscious journey and you only see it in hindsight. So I'm just curious if like your sixth line plays into that. So yeah. Anyways, I know we're down a little rabbit hole here. So let me bring it back.
I love it.
Can you speak to the frequency bands of the 24 because they are when you read them addiction, invention, silence, they sound so disjointed to me. So I'm curious if you can speak to them a little bit.
Yeah. So, like I was saying, this one is in the ajna center and it reaches towards the head. And it comes down that center sort of channel in the body graph that's an individual knowing. And the gate that it actually reaches towards is the 61st, which is like connected to inspiration, like receiving inspiration. I think that's important to understand this energy of the 24 because it's basically like opening up to receive that information and then processing it, kind of conceptualizing it and rationalizing, putting it into form in the ajna. And so at the shadow frequency, what I really tune into with this, um, obviously, when we hear the word addiction, we were talking about this a bit before the call, but a lot of times we think of like the more like socially unacceptable addictions. But there are every single one of us has an addiction to something. And I love the way that Richard describes it. So I actually wrote it down because he described it as a pattern of behavior that temporarily suspends discomfort. And then we basically like continue to engage in that whenever we feel the discomfort. So really addiction is like avoiding being with the discomfort. Um, and that's actually kind of what we're having a discussion about right now, which is like, I can see that one of the reasons that I didn't allow myself the alone time that I do now is because it wasn't very comfortable. Like it was uncomfortable to be with people and not like know myself, but it was more uncomfortable to be with myself and know that I didn't know myself, if that makes sense. And so for a long time, I avoided that. And I also did engage in like escapism, um, with different substances and things like that. Um, but yeah, I think it's important to keep this in mind because actually, I kind of see the 24 coming up a lot, this shadow frequency, when we get too like connected to that routine of escaping the discomfort. So it's like we feel like we need that thing, whatever that thing may be, because it does suspend that sort of feeling that we don't want to look at. What happens then is that we're just kind of going through the motions then. We're doing this thing that we've always done in the same way that we always do it, and we're not opening ourselves up to receive the new insights and inspiration that wants to come through that channel. And that's where we get the gift of invention when we do step outside of those, like, I'm going to call them routines. I'm just saying routines in the sense of like feeling like you need to do something all the time, um, and like not really stepping outside of the box. But when we step outside of the box, you could probably notice this. I notice this a lot when I travel, right? Like I have these incredible new insights drop in and things like that when I move outside of my day-to-day habitual living. And that's what this key is really all about. And that's even at the full spectrum of it, which is the silence, which isn't like silence in the sense of like no noise. It's silence in the sense of like the
Mhm.
mind, which is wanting to like escape the everything, is silenced. And so it's just letting the inspiration kind of
Mhm.
like drop in. I even get chills when I am saying this because it's just like it's silencing the mind more than it's silencing like the world around us or anything like that.
Mhm. It's no longer striving, is how I'm seeing it. And I'll speak to the addiction and invention piece, just maybe a little bit from I'm seeing it as like my third line.
Yeah.
Um, also this perpetual inspiration and seeking of inspiration. So um, not necessarily landing on a particular inspiration, right? So of the avoiding discomfort piece, um, also seeking something else, something else, something else. And that and I do this, which is why I'm speaking to it. I don't have this gate, but um, yeah, like to me, because it reaches towards the 61, I think you said it is, the gate of inspiration. Um, like to me, it's reaching to find inspiration in its shadow. Um, and if you never land on that inspiration, you can't have that invention because you don't give it enough time and space to actually ground in and create that gift frequency. And this is something that I've lived um, in my journey as a three line, especially in my business, trying new things all the time, and eventually rolling back and seeing that there's this thread of them all that like, oh, this is kind of like a different iteration of the same thing. But also like me trying something new and not giving it enough time and space to land because I'm going to try something again. Another thing I'll say about addiction too, because I love the way he speaks about it, Maston Kipp. I don't follow him anymore, but years ago I did, and this is like the one thing I took from him. He does a lot of like nervous system stuff, but he talked about it as high level coping and low level coping. The other thing he said actually was about limiting. He said nobody wakes up and wants to be limited as a human, and he calls them survival beliefs instead of limiting beliefs, and I always really resonated with that too. But anyways, so he somebody needed to hear that. So with the coping, there's high level coping and low level coping. So to your point, when we think about addictions in terms of like sex and drugs and alcohol and gambling and things like that, versus high level coping could be like learning, working out, right? I'm going to be this perpetual learner and getting into that fixing. I got to fix something, right? That again, like when you're in that perpetual state of striving, you never give it actually time and space to land. So just said a little differently, right? We're avoiding the discomfort. It's through the discomfort that the change happens, that the invention happens, Right. So it's interesting to look at it from that perspective too, right? Like you said, we all have addictions to something. Um, and yeah, the silence I very clearly saw as you were explaining it, this not strive. I'm no longer striving to change. Maybe, and not that we're not growing or evolving, but there's, more of a surrender to the timing of when things land or come through. And again, I'm no longer striving is the easiest way for me to express that, what I'm feeling with that. So thank you for going through those.
Of course. Yeah, I love the way that you connect to it with this because it also brings up, like, I think it can sometimes also be called the gate of pondering. And I think that's a good word for it, like that you're really touching on the essence of, which is, yeah, that we do need time to sit with things and like let them almost just like percolate in the field, right? It's not like we all of a sudden just receive like, ah, and then it's like, you know, um, it might feel like that, but we've been sitting with that thing for a while. And then finally it kind of like clicks into place. Um, and yeah, I see a real sense of like patience with this as you're, yeah, speaking to like if we're if we're constantly just trying to move and keep things going to avoid that underlying discomfort, then we miss out on um, yeah, everything that's really kind of like there for us to uh, just be with, and how that then will land in its right timing if we just kind of like let go.
Yeah. And honestly, just sitting with the conversations we've had up until now, it feels like that's a common theme. How can we just be more and do less, like in all these different lenses that we're looking through? Because I always, whoever said like we're human beings, not human doings, right? It's that energy. We don't we don't have to control life. Like it's happening all around us, and we get to just participate and witness and attune to our own bodies and our experiences and shift maybe the way we show up within that. But we don't have to make anything happen. We don't have to strive, which is interesting to say, right? Because my mind immediately jumps to, well, if I'm not striving for something, then I'm complacent or, right? But there's a way to move through life without striving, being a witness to what's happening and allowing that to evolve through you without striving to find it. There's still evolution and growth that happens there.
Yeah, I'm really feeling the slow build of Taurus, like an embodied Taurian energy. To me, it just feels like it takes its time. It just kind of like luxuriates in what is and enjoys um, life and like the simple things in life and like seeing food in the garden and just I've even been feeling it as the sun has moved into Taurus, like that that yearning to just slow down, like what, not, it's not about trying to like keep moving, keep doing, keep, um, yeah, like figuring it out. It's more like, let's a little bit and take our time. And
Mhm.
that kind of building is the building that lasts, is like, really being intentional with it and really being aware. Again, this is an invitation to kind of move out of the the monotony of like, oh, we get up, we do this, we do that, we do this, we do that, we go to sleep, we do it all over again. And it's instead like, you know, I think even those questions that were coming up, like, why are we doing this? Why, is this something that we really want to be doing? Is this part of what we're building? If we come from Aries with something new, then now it's asking us, okay, now we're moving down this new path and we get to choose how we move down it. Like, how do we want to move with this new thing?
Yeah, I feel it like the whole idea of romanticizing our life. Again, just I think you said like luxuriating, like just seeing seeing life through that lens of beauty, like sometimes when I eat almonds, this is so ridiculous, but when I eat almonds and I bite into one and it like splits perfectly in half and it's so smooth, I'm just like, wow, like nature's amazing. Look at how smooth that almond is. Like little things like that that are, you just notice like how perfect um natural beauty is.
Yeah. Living art, right?
Mm. How are we feeling? There's like, I wanted to go down a couple other little rabbit holes, but how are you feeling in terms of completion?
Yeah, I'm feeling good. I know there's so much to explore with these. Um, so if there's anything else you want to explore, I'm totally down for it. But I'm also trusting that what we did explore was what we were meant to explore.
Yeah,
So
I trust that too. So, all right. Well, we'll wrap up here then. So, thank you for being here with us on this journey. And again, if you have, reflections on how you've experienced these keys or just the energy in general right now, even if it doesn't feel related to the keys, like we'd love to hear from you. And if you know somebody who would enjoy this conversation, we would be honored if you shared it out into the world and just get it into some more ears and help us spread the resonance of this work, these energies, these shifts, these contemplations. So, thank you for being here, and we will see you next week.